Hey everyone, today we're diving into another terrifying case. Please support my channel by hitting that subscribe button and turning on the notifications. At the mercy of the elements. The world is such that accidents can happen anywhere. Even the simplest, most routine situation can turn disastrous. We take risks every day, yet naively believe we control everything. Some people intentionally invite risk into their lives. For some, it becomes a constant pursuit tied to their professional activities, while others occasionally seek a thrill. Extreme hobbies like skydiving, rock climbing, caving, parkour, and more fall into this category. Diving is also on the list of dangerous pastimes. The desire to explore the ocean depths is understandable. Water and its inhabitants have always attracted both researchers and ordinary people. The vastness of the water space, far larger than land, adds to its intrigue. Diving is one of the most popular activities, but it's not the safest. Many things can go wrong. Oxygen deprivation, barotrauma, encounters with dangerous animals or strong currents, and more. The most unexpected thing can happen. You could be forgotten during an underwater excursion. What may seem like a joke at first is actually a reality. The story of the Lonergan family is a tragic confirmation of this. Though the events occurred back in 1998, and many safety protocols have since been implemented to prevent such occurrences, this story still chills to the bone. Imagine the horror experienced by the two spouses left alone at sea. A quarter of a century has passed since then, yet many continue to debate what really happened to the couple. Was their disappearance the result of tragic negligence, or a deliberate decision to end their lives? Let's try to figure this out together. The long-awaited dive. On January 25, 1998, Thomas and Eileen Lonergan left their hostel in the Australian town of Cairns. Leaving the northeastern part of Queensland behind, the young couple headed further north to Port Douglas. Their goal, a long-anticipated dive into the waters of the Great Barrier Reef. The world's largest coral reef system had long been a magnet for avid divers. At the designated location, the 33-year-old man and 28-year-old woman boarded the boat, Outer Edge, along with other like-minded individuals. A total of 13 pairs set out that day to St. Crispin's Reef. The one-day excursion, costing around $100, was full of promise. The package included 3 dives in a picturesque and safe location, all under the supervision of an experienced crew. It's worth noting that the company providing underwater tourism services was considered one of the best and had years of experience, so travelers could pursue their dreams with peace of mind. The weather on January 25th was ideal for the tourists. By all accounts, it was a perfect day for scuba diving. The water at the dive site was pleasantly warm. From the start, the couple declined the services of guide Catherine Traverso, relying on their extensive experience. The Lonergans had completed 160 dives in their lifetime and were considered seasoned divers. The boat's passengers donned their gear and jumped into the coral sea. The diversity of flora and fauna was stunning. The Great Barrier Reef is home to around 1,500 species of fish and 400 types of coral. When the dive time was up, a signal sounded from the boat, clearly audible underwater, indicating it was time to surface. Afterward, everyone emerged and returned to the vessel. Around 3 p.m., the protagonists of this story took their third dive, descending to a depth of 39 feet. The underwater tour was coming to an end, and time flew by unnoticed. Within an hour, everyone was back on board. According to the crew, a head count was conducted, and the number of divers matched the original count, 26 people. That evening, the Outer Edge arrived in Port Douglas, but not all the divers disembarked. It turned out several tourists were missing. However, what was more horrifying was that no one had noticed this. The same applied to the 2 bags that remained on board. To this day, it's unclear how the crew miscounted the passengers and failed to notice the belongings left behind. One way or another, the missing individuals were Thomas and Eileen Lonergan, together forever. Thomas and Eileen met while studying at Louisiana State University, where Eileen was learning the basics of scuba diving. They instantly liked each other and began dating. The couple was deeply in love and inseparable. They went camping, swam in the ocean, and attended parties together. Their relationship was admired by many and seemed ideal. Some even envied their genuine love. No matter what they did it together. Eileen had a great passion for diving. She spoke about it with such enthusiasm that Thomas couldn't resist, and soon shared his beloved's interest. Over time, the young couple earned their certification in this field. Eventually, on June 24, 1988, they sealed their union in marriage. The wedding took place in Jefferson, Texas. Since both were born and raised in Louisiana and had never traveled abroad, they dreamed of seeing the world. Thomas and Eileen were also known for their kindness and compassion, so when they were offered the opportunity to join the Peace Corps, they eagerly agreed. The Lonergans were perfect candidates for this role. During their student years, they participated in numerous charity projects and events, offering help to those in need. The Peace Corps, an independent U.S. government agency, sends volunteers to assist struggling countries, promoting friendship and peace worldwide. After a successful internship in Tuvalu, a country in Polynesia, the couple moved on to Fiji, where they taught children from impoverished families. At the time of these events, they had been married for 10 years. By then they had completed their mission and were planning to return to the U.S. However, the Lonergans had one more wish: a world cruise. They wanted to visit famous places and take in the local beauty. Their return home was scheduled for March 1999, but first, they had a long and exciting journey ahead: the Great Barrier Reef. As avid divers, the couple had long dreamed of seeing the wonders of the Great Barrier Reef. This is why they ended up in Australia. The local attraction is renowned worldwide. Did you know it's the largest coral reef system on the planet? Created by marine organisms, it's a truly unique natural marvel. Its area surpasses the size of some countries and is even visible from space. The Lonergans wanted to capture this wonder in their memories forever, knowing it might not last. You can't imagine how Thomas and Eileen saw it back in 1998. Today, much of the ecosystem has vanished. Once vibrant and diverse, the corals have become bleached. While not dead, they are at high risk of disappearing forever if they become diseased or are exposed to destructive external forces. Even a slight rise in water temperature can cause this. For optimal coral growth, water temperatures need to be between 72 and 81 degrees Fahrenheit. The beauty of the Great Barrier Reef can still be enjoyed today, but in the face of the greenhouse effect, its days are numbered. A significant coral bleaching event occurred in 1997 to 1998, which is why our couple was in such a hurry. They rushed to see the reef while it was still alive, only to encounter death instead. Criminal negligence. Based on general knowledge and film scenarios, we can imagine the scene that unfolded before the couple after they surfaced. An endless sea stretched around them, with no sign of the only symbol of safety: the outer edge boat. Two young people, without food or water, were left alone amidst the vast ocean. Surrounding them were threats in the form of dangerous sharks, the blazing sun, and the risk of dehydration. The desperate divers could only hope that their disappearance would be noticed, and that they would be rescued in time. After all, according to the rules, the number of people on board must be counted multiple times, before the dive and after. Even if a miscount occurred, records should be made upon surfacing about the dive depth, air levels in the tanks, and so on. In short, the required documentation should have been kept. In the end, even if none of this had been done, the Lonergans' personal belongings remained on board, which surely couldn't have gone unnoticed. Initially, the couple likely thought it was a funny mistake, something they would laugh about later when telling their friends. But as the hours passed, nothing changed. Two at sea. The realization of the inevitable came slowly. No one wants to believe in the worst until the very end. Over time, the forgotten couple began to assess their situation more clearly. In reality, Thomas and Eileen could do nothing. There was no one in sight, and calling for help was pointless. Swimming to shore was equally impossible. There were no islands nearby. Despite being experienced divers, it was unrealistic to cover the 60-mile distance to land. Adding to their fears was the fact that Australia is home to the largest and most vicious sharks in the world. It wouldn't take much for these predators to attack the stranded tourists and deal with them. The couple had no tools to defend themselves from this looming threat. Nor did they have any water or food with them. It is known that the average life expectancy without water is 2 to 4 days. For some, this period may stretch a few extra days. While a person can survive much longer without food, water is essential. Without it, dehydration sets in after 5 to 7 days. How long a person can endure without sustenance depends on their health, body mass, willpower, and the climate. Regardless, death under these conditions is slow and agonizing. On top of that, they faced scorching heat, increasing the likelihood of sunstroke or heat exhaustion. The only two comforting thoughts at that moment were these. First, they were not alone in this situation, but together, as they had always been. Second, as divers, they were unlikely to drown. Their gear included buoyancy compensators, which are much more reliable than life jackets. The next danger they faced came in the form of strong winds and powerful currents. They were being carried farther and farther away. Even if someone began searching for them after a while, they would no longer be in the same location. The most tragic aspect, however, was that there were pontoons, just 1.5 to 2 miles away. These floating platforms, anchored to the ocean floor, provide a place to rest. Had the Lonergans known about this, things could have been very different. They could have waited for help in relative safety, resting, and even sleeping. But alas, a different fate awaited them. The couple was being swept into open waters, farther from any chance of rescue. With about 5 hours left until sunset, night, the most dangerous time, was approaching. For when everything sleeps, the sea comes alive. A chance at rescue. At this time, the 24 passengers of the Outer Edge and the crew had all disembarked. The exhausted tourists headed to their hotel rooms, and the boat's crew returned home to their families. No one gave a thought to anything being wrong. No one cared about the belongings left aboard. Everyone was simply tired after a busy day and eager for rest. The next day brought no significant changes. However, there was one moment that should have drawn attention. Another group of divers visited the Great Barrier Reef. The familiar boat pulled up to its usual spot, and the tourists descended into the water. Upon resurfacing, one of them told a crew member that they had noticed diving weights on the ocean floor. These weights, part of a diver's equipment, are used to counteract buoyancy. Most likely, the discovered gear belonged to Thomas and Eileen, who had detached them. But the crew member didn't take the information seriously, chalking it up as an interesting find. Yet such items don't simply lie around on the ocean floor for no reason. The negligent worker should have treated the discovery with the attention and caution it deserved. Unfortunately, another mistake, an act of negligence occurred. Had an alarm been raised, perhaps the search for the missing couple would have started sooner, and they might have survived. The cruel irony of fate, waiting for help and fighting for your life while people and a boat are not far away. Sadly, this is often the case. Life and death walk side by side. 2 days later. On January 27th, during the cleaning of the boat, someone finally noticed the forgotten belongings. Curious to find out who they belonged to, the bag was opened, revealing dry clothes, a wallet, and documents in the names of Thomas and Eileen Lonergan. The crew remembered seeing the couple 2 days prior. During that time, no one had come to claim the items, which was quite strange. This is when things started to become clear. The skipper who made the discovery immediately reported everything to the police. The investigation began right away. Everyone understood the gravity of 2 tourists disappearing. Law enforcement officers checked the missing couple's hotel room. Unsurprisingly, there were no guests inside. The hotel staff confirmed they had seen the couple before their trip on Sunday morning. After that, they never returned. However, No one had raised any alarms since the room had been prepaid, and it was assumed their excursion could have lasted several days. Tension mounted. The police interviewed the Outer Edge crew, as well as all the passengers from the past few days. It became apparent that no one had seen Thomas and Eileen for quite some time. Moreover, no one could recall if they had even come ashore. Each tourist had been busy with their own activities. The crew insisted that they had counted everyone before heading to shore, but perhaps they had counted the same couple twice. However, some tourists pointed out they hadn't noticed any counting at all, at least not out loud. The discovery of the weight belt was also mentioned. The search. Things were looking bad. To organize a large-scale search, the police called for triple reinforcements. 17 planes and 2 helicopters were dispatched. The Coast Guard, several private boats, and concerned citizens all joined the search effort. The area where the tourists had been left was scoured thoroughly. Over time, the search zone shifted. In 2 days, the current had carried the couple far away. Throughout all of this, Port Douglas was in an uproar. Everyone was shocked by the incident, holding out hope for a positive outcome. However, many understood that the chances of rescue after such a long period of inactivity were slim to none. The company that had organized the excursion realized the gravity of the situation and prepared to bear responsibility. The boat's crew knew they had been outrageously careless and negligent. Nothing could justify it. The large-scale search lasted 5 days. Continuing beyond that seemed pointless. By this time, anything could have happened to the couple. In the end, they could have died from dehydration or been attacked. The evidence. Supporting this, on February 5, 1998, a buoyancy compensator washed ashore near Indian Head, more than 100 miles north of Port Douglas. It was found to contain a tag with the name Thomas Lonergan. Interestingly, no bite marks from predators were found on it. This is when the case of the couple's disappearance became more convoluted. Shortly after, Eileen's wetsuit and a second buoyancy compensator presumed to be hers were also found. The wetsuit had cuts on it, leading some to suspect they were caused by shark teeth. However, if that had been the case, it's unlikely that anything would have been left of the suit. Later, forensic experts determined the tears were caused by coral. The wetsuit had even accumulated barnacles, indicating it had been in the water for quite some time. Forensic specialists suggested the wetsuit had been submerged since January 26th, the day after the described events. It's possible that, under the scorching sun and heat, combined with a lack of water, Eileen began experiencing delirium, causing her to remove her suit, which would have compromised her ability to stay afloat. Later, diving weights and oxygen tanks were found, some still containing air. However, none of the discovered items provided evidence of death caused by marine predators. What was clear was that the couple didn't have enough time for anyone to find them alive. On February 14th, the search for the missing couple was officially called off. 3 weeks is more than enough time for human bodies to be entirely consumed by the open ocean. According to all biological and anatomical principles, the Lonergans couldn't have survived unless they had been picked up by another boat. But if that were the case, they would have made contact. The last message. 6 months later, a diving slate belonging to the couple was found 160 miles from where the tourists had disappeared. This specialized slate is used for underwater communication and note-taking. Thanks to it, we now know how long Thomas and Eileen remained alive. On one side of the slate, the message read, Monday, January 26, 1998, 8 a.m. To anyone who can help us, we were left behind at Agincourt Reef on January 25, 1998, at 3 p.m. Please help us, send assistance before we die. SOS. The couple realized they were on the verge of death and used every possible means to save themselves, even the smallest chance. On October 10, 1998, police officer Noel Noonan made an official statement. Authorities believed that the missing man and woman likely passed away between 8 a.m. on January 26th and February 2nd. Most likely, Their death resulted from dehydration or drowning. After being exposed to the hot sun for an extended period without water, they became exhausted and disoriented. The divers voluntarily shed their heavy gear, which had been keeping them afloat. One thing was clear in this situation: they were unlikely to have been eaten. The couple's family members were devastated by the loss. Their deaths seemed senseless and avoidable. Thomas and Eileen were young, with their whole lives ahead of them. But the crew's negligence proved fatal. A professional company, which had maintained a good reputation for years, failed to follow basic safety protocols. Justice. When it came time to face justice, Jeffrey Nairn, captain of the Outer Edge, stood trial for manslaughter. He was responsible for ensuring safety on board. The defendant swore that he had instructed one of the crew members to perform a head count after the final dive, but the crew member made an unforgivable mistake. Allegedly, 2 tourists were counted twice because they had gone for a swim after surfacing. Thanks to the defense's efforts, the Australian Supreme Court acquitted the boat captain in 1999. The defense attorney presented entries from the couple's diaries, which suggested they had grown weary of life, having seen and experienced everything, and wanted to depart voluntarily while they were still young. The relatives of the missing couple argued that Thomas had likely been in a depressed state when he wrote those entries, but that didn't mean he would have taken such a drastic step. Moreover, the couple would never have put others at risk of legal trouble. They were members of the Peace Corps, known for their compassion and sense of responsibility. It was also revealed that Thomas's words had been taken out of context, but the case was not reopened on those grounds. As for the diving company, it suffered an inevitable collapse. Its reputation could not be restored. Following the court's ruling, a massive fine was imposed on the company. The financial burden was too great, and the management declared bankruptcy. Was this justice? One way or another, the beautiful couple could never be brought back. They had been left to face a horrific death in open waters. To this day, their bodies have not been found. Version 1. Perhaps the court's verdict was influenced by the speculation surrounding the missing couple. By the end of 1998, unexpected theories about what had happened began to surface in the media. It started to seem as if the tragic story had a secret motive, or perhaps the press was simply trying to create that illusion. One of the most popular theories was that it was a voluntary departure from life. The idea was that one spouse deprived the other of life, and then ended his own. This theory was seemingly supported by the personal diaries of the Lonergans. The claim was that their deaths were not due to negligence but were part of a carefully planned act by Thomas and Eileen. In support of this, personal writings were cited. 6 months before the event, Thomas wrote, "Like a student who has passed an exam, I think my life is wonderful, and I'm ready to die. From what I can tell, my life can only go downhill from here. I've reached my peak, and everything is going down." Eileen's thoughts were no less alarming. It was believed that she knew of her husband's desires, and was willing to share them. A few weeks before the underwater excursion to the Great Barrier Reef, she wrote, "Tom wants to die a sharp and clear death, and he wants it to happen soon. He's not prone to ending his own life, but he has the desire to die, and I can support him in that." The theory suggests that the couple may have chosen this unusual method because both loved diving. There was something almost mystical about the idea of dying in a place where coral reefs were slowly dying as well. However, the couple's relatives didn't agree with this version. They were convinced that Thomas and Eileen wanted to live, which is why they had planned a vacation after their long mission. In addition, they had recently talked about having children. While they hadn't rushed into parenthood before, they had come to the realization that life would be more joyful with a child. They wanted to continue their family line and pass down their knowledge. It also came to light that journalists had used the couple's diary entries without regard for context, presenting speculation as fact. The spouse's words were twisted and misinterpreted. Version 2. Others believe that the Lonergans' deaths were staged. American researchers Hugh Merchan and Audrey Lindock, who investigated the case, supported this theory. They believed that Thomas and Eileen intended for their diary entries to be found and published. After all, How else would they have ended up in the media? It was revealed that the couple had financial problems that could have resulted in long prison sentences. The theory is that the couple never intended to return home after their trip, choosing instead to escape punishment. It is possible they were picked up by another boat, which had been hired for this purpose. Additionally, there were reports from people claiming to have seen the missing couple. Given the story's notoriety, their faces were recognizable to many. Over the years, police received multiple reports from eyewitnesses who said they had seen the Lonergans alive and well. However, after investigation, these reports turned out to be false. Some were not taken seriously at all. It was also established that since their disappearance, the couple's bank accounts had remained untouched, despite containing substantial sums of money. Sad conclusion. Officially, Thomas and Eileen are still considered missing. Their story served as the basis for the film Open Water, made in 2003 by a married couple who spent about $120,000 bringing the real-life events to the screen. The film helps viewers understand what the couple may have felt in such a dire situation. Each viewer can put themselves in their shoes and feel the helplessness that a person experiences when faced with the elements and predatory animals. The film touches on human negligence in many ways. Even in the final scenes, when fishermen find a scuba camera inside a shark's stomach, belonging to the couple, the focus is on their indifference. One of them says, "I wonder if this thing works." Yet no one questions how it got there or what happened to its owner. Just as the crew of The Outer Edge had been careless with their duties, failing to notice the couple's personal belongings left behind. If everyone had done their job properly, the tragedy could have been avoided. Despite the different theories, it's most likely that Thomas and Eileen met their end. They were doomed to a slow and agonizing death. The only positive outcome of this entire situation was the tightening of safety measures in diving operations and the mandatory name-by-name headcount of divers on boats. Terrible consequences, a monstrous lesson. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. There are a lot of shocking stories coming up.